They sold out Shea Stadium faster than the Beatles. They moved 10 million records in a single year when Led Zeppelin was still opening for them. They had 6 platinum albums, 7 gold certifications, and were the biggest American band on the planet. Then their manager showed up with a court order to repossess their instruments minutes before a sold-out show at Madison Square Garden. They went from earning $5,000 per minute at their peak to fighting a $57 million lawsuit that would strip them of everything they'd created. Band members couldn't stand in the same room together. Critics called them the worst band in the world. And decades later, they were still at war over a name, a legacy, and millions in stolen royalties. This is the story of how a working-class power trio from Flint, Michigan became the people's band against the music industry's will, and how the very success they built was weaponized to destroy them from the inside. A tale of brotherhood wrecked by greed, control, and a manager who saw them as products to be owned. But to understand the collapse, we have to go back to 1969, to 3 guys who had nothing but volume, ambition, and a lie that would change everything. This wasn't a town that bred rock stars. It was a city built on assembly lines, union halls, and the kind of working-class grit that didn't have time for dreams. Rock music wasn't an escape here. It was survival. It was the only way out. Mark Farner was the visionary. A guitarist and vocalist with a raw, howling voice that could cut through a 4,000-watt amplifier like a chainsaw. He played guitar, keyboards, harmonica, wrote the songs, and believed rock and roll could change the world. Don Brewer was the engine, the drummer who kept the machine running, tight and relentless. He had the work ethic of a factory shift and the precision to hold down the chaos Farner unleashed. Mel Shocker was the wild card. A bass player stolen from Question Mark and the Mysterians, he was barely out of his teens but played with the ferocity of someone twice his age. 3 strings, maximum volume, no apologies. They called themselves the Grand Funk Railroad, inspired by Michigan's Grand Trunk Western Railroad. The original railroad company objected, so they changed one word and kept moving. That was the attitude. Nobody was going to stop them. Their sound was simple, brutal, and undeniable. A power trio in the vein of Cream, but louder, rawer, more working class. No jazz fusion. No art school pretension. Just riffs, rhythm, and rage. Critics would call it Neanderthal rock. Fans would call it liberation. But there was a 4th person in the room from the very beginning. And he wasn't there to play music. Terry Knight. Knight had been a regional DJ spinning records at WDC in Flint and CKLW in Windsor, pumping out hits and building a reputation. He fronted a band with Farner and Brewer called Terry Knight and the Pack. He even had a minor hit with I, Who Have Nothing, which cracked the top 50. But Knight's real talent wasn't music. It was manipulation. He told his bandmates he was personal friends with Mick Jagger and Brian Jones. He wasn't. He lied about connections, about industry pull, about everything that would make young musicians believe he held the keys to the kingdom. And when Farner, Brewer, and Shocker formed Grand Funk Railroad, Knight convinced them he was the only one who could take them to the top. He became their manager, their producer, their handler, and from day one he controlled everything. The band's first miracle came on July 4, 1969, at the Atlanta Pop Festival. They played for free. No expectations. Just three guys with a wall of sound and something to prove. The crowd exploded. The promoters asked them back for all 3 days. Capitol Records was watching. By the time the festival ended, Grand Funk Railroad had a record deal. But even in the beginning, the seeds of destruction were already there. Knight wasn't managing the band. He was owning them. He set up GFR Enterprises, a corporation where he held 21% control. He negotiated production deals where he took 16% of album profits while the band split 6%. He put them on a weekly stipend of a few $100s while millions poured in. The contracts were iron. The control was absolute. And none of them knew it yet. But the music? The music was about to explode. August 1969. Grand Funk's debut album, On Time, hit the shelves. Critics hated it. Rolling Stone tore it apart. But the fans? The fans bought over 1 million copies. It cracked the top 30 by November. Then came the Red Album in December. Then Closer to Home in June 1970. Terry Knight spent $100,000 on a Times Square billboard just to advertise the album. It worked. Closer to Home hit number 6. So, if you are enjoying this video, please subscribe. In 1970 alone, Grand Funk Railroad sold 10 million records. More than any other American band that year. More than most bands would sell in a lifetime. They toured like machines. 18 to 22 days a month. Every night, a different city. A 4,000-watt sound system blasting to 30,000 people. No opening acts. No warm-up. Just Grand Funk and a crowd that came to lose their minds. But beneath this triumph, the critics were sharpening their knives. Rolling Stone didn't just dislike Grand Funk. They despised them. They called them the worst band in the world. They compared them to the TV Western Bonanza as an insult to both. When the band announced their Shea Stadium show, the headline read, "The world's biggest transistor radio to play New York." Terry Knight loved it. He took out a full-page ad featuring himself giving Rolling Stone the middle finger. He framed the band as the people's band, the underdog fighting the elitist music press. And it worked. The more critics hated Grand Funk, the more fans loved them. But what fans didn't see was the toll. Don Brewer later admitted the criticism hurt. "It really hurt a lot," he said. "These were guys who believed in what they were doing, and the industry treated them like a joke. They were selling millions, filling arenas, and being told they didn't matter. And that's where the trouble began. Because while the band was exhausted, burning out from non-stop touring, Terry Knight was counting money. And he wasn't sharing. The band was getting a few $100s a week in stipends. Knight was taking percentages from every album, every show, every piece of merchandise. He owned the songs. He owned the name. He owned them. By 1971, Grand Funk's earnings hit $5 million. The band members were still living on allowances. But they had no idea how bad it was about to get. The Beatles had played Shea in 1965. It took them weeks to sell out. Grand Funk Railroad sold out in 72 hours. 55,000 fans packed the stadium. The band arrived by helicopter with the side door open, hair whipping in the wind, descending like gods. Humble Pie opened with Steve Marriott and Peter Frampton. But everyone was there for Grand Funk. They earned $304,000 that night. $5,010 per minute. The Maysles brothers filmed the whole thing. It was supposed to be a moment of triumph. A working-class band from Flint, Michigan, standing on the same stage as the Beatles and breaking their record. Terry Knight held a press conference in May to announce the show. He invited 150 reporters. 6 showed up. Knight called it the grossest case of non-recognition in music business history. The industry still refused to respect them. But the fans? The fans were rabid. E Pluribus Funk, the album released to commemorate the Shea Show, was shaped like a coin with an embossed depiction of the stadium on the back. It was bold. It was cocky. It was everything Grand Funk represented. But that moment of glory was also the beginning of the end. Because while they looked unstoppable on stage, everything off stage was cracking. By late 1971, Farner, Brewer, and Shocker started asking questions. Where was the money going? Why were they still on stipends? Why did Terry Knight have more control over their music than they did? The answers were worse than they imagined. Knight was taking 16% of album profits through his production deal. The band was splitting 6%. Knight had 21% of GFR Enterprises. He controlled publishing. He controlled the copyrights. He controlled everything. And when they tried to fire him, he came for their throats. Knight responded by suing them for $57 million for breach of contract. $57 million. It was one of the largest lawsuits in music history at the time. And Knight wasn't bluffing. He wanted the money. He wanted the name. He wanted to destroy them. The band hired John Eastman, Paul McCartney's brother-in-law, to fight back. But the legal battle consumed everything. 2 years of depositions, court dates, and frozen assets. The music didn't stop, but the damage was done. And then came December 23, 1972. Madison Square Garden. A benefit concert. Sold out. The band was backstage ready to go on. Terry Knight showed up with a court order to repossess their instruments. Read that again. Minutes before a sold-out show at Madison Square Garden, their former manager tried to take their guitars, drums, and amps. John Eastman convinced Knight to wait until after the performance. The band went on stage knowing that everything they'd built was being ripped away in real time. So, if you are enjoying this video, please subscribe. The lawsuit dragged on until 1974. The final settlement was brutal. Knight won the copyrights and publishing royalties to every Grand Funk recording made between March 1969 and March 1972. Every hit, every album, gone. He also received an enormous cash payout in oil wells. Yes, oil wells. Farner, Brewer, and Shocker got one thing: the right to use the name Grand Funk Railroad. Knight had openly admitted the original contract would have expired in 3 more months. They could have waited, but they didn't know. And it cost them everything. The band was free, but they were broken. After the lawsuit, Grand Funk tried to rebuild. They brought in Craig Frost on keyboards in 1972, shifting their sound from raw garage rock toward rhythm and blues and pop. They tried to recruit Peter Frampton first, but he'd already signed a solo deal with A&M. Their new managers, road manager Andy Cavalier and photographer Lynn Goldsmith, brought in Todd Rundgren to produce. And for a brief moment, it worked. In 1973, they shortened their name to just Grand Funk and released We're an American Band. The title track hit #1 on Mark Farner's 25th birthday. It was their first chart topper. In 1974, their cover of The Locomotion became their second #1 hit. It was the first time in U.S. chart history that a cover version of a song that had already hit #1 reached that position again. The album All the Girls in the World Beware featured the band members' heads photoshopped onto the bodies of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu. It spawned 2 more top 10 hits, Some Kind of Wonderful and Bad Time. They were back, at least on the surface. But beneath this success, the foundation was rotting. Mark Farner and Don Brewer had different visions for the band's direction. Farner wanted to stay true to their hard rock roots. Brewer wanted to evolve, chase radio play, and adapt to changing trends. Musical tastes were shifting. Disco was taking over. Progressive rock was fading. And Grand Funk was caught in the middle, unsure of who they were supposed to be anymore. Burnout set in. Personal tensions mounted. The lawsuit had drained them emotionally and financially. And the question no one wanted to ask was, could they even survive without the chaos? In August 1975, they released the double live album Caught in the Act. It was the first Grand Funk album that didn't go gold or platinum. The audience was moving on. In January 1976, Born to Die barely cracked the top 50, peaking at #47. They tried to cash in on disco. It was shambolic, desperate. A band that had once defined an era was now chasing trends. Frank Zappa, of all people, produced their 1976 album Good Singin', Good Playin'. It earned them some of their best critical reviews ever. But nobody bought it. Mark Farner later said, things were disenfranchised within the band. That was the understatement of the decade. In late 1976, Grand Funk Railroad disbanded. But the story wasn't over. Grand Funk Lives peaked at #149 on the Billboard 200. 149. The dismal sales and the sudden death of manager Andy Cavalier in 1982 ended the reunion. The band broke up again in early 1983. For over a decade, Grand Funk Railroad was dead. Then in 1996, the original 3 members, Farner, Brewer, and Shocker, reunited. And for a brief moment, it felt like the old magic was back. They played to over 500,000 people across 3 years. Nostalgia was powerful. The fans were still there. But the wounds never healed. So, if you are enjoying this video, please don't forget to subscribe. In 1998, Mark Farner signed documents that he didn't fully understand. Those documents allowed Don Brewer and Mel Shocker to legally vote him out of the band. In 1999, they did exactly that. Farner was gone. Fired from the band he co-founded. Forced out of the legacy he built. Brewer and Shocker kept the name Grand Funk Railroad. They brought in Max Carl on vocals, Bruce Kulick on guitar, and Tim Cashin on keyboards. Kulick eventually left in 2024. Mark Farner now tours as Mark Farner's American Band. He can't use the name Grand Funk. He can't play with his former bandmates. And he refuses to reconcile. Decades later, the battle became about legacy. Not music. Not fans. Legacy. Who owns the name? Who gets the royalties? Who has the right to say they were the Grand Funk Railroad? Terry Knight, the man who started it all, was murdered in 2004. Stabbed to death by his teenage daughter's boyfriend. A violent, ugly end to a violent, ugly story. And the band? They're still fractured. Still fighting. Still refusing to be in the same room. Today, Don Brewer and Mel Shocker toured the Grand Funk Railroad. They play the hits to audiences who remember the glory days. They control the name, the brand, the legacy. Mark Farner plays the same songs under a different name. He's still out there, still performing, still carrying the weight of everything that was taken from him. They will never reunite. The hatred is too deep. The betrayal is too complete. Grand Funk Railroad sold over 25 million records worldwide. They had 6 platinum and 7 gold albums. They outsold the Beatles in America in 1970. They broke attendance records. They were a people's band. And yet, as one music historian put it, they have almost been erased from memory, their music consigned to the deletion bins of heavy metal history. Success didn't just create legends. It created enemies. The music industry chewed them up, spit them out, and moved on. The critics who hated them got the last laugh. And the 3 men who built an empire together can't even share a stage. This is what happens when art becomes business. When brotherhood becomes ownership. When the people who create the music lose the right to control it. Grand Funk Railroad rose higher and fell harder than almost any band in rock history. And the saddest part? The music was always good enough. The fans were always there. But the system, the greed, and the betrayal made sure none of that mattered. The dream died at Shea Stadium. They just didn't know it yet. So here's the question. What part of this story hits you the hardest? Have you ever seen Grand Funk live? Do you think they deserved better from the critics? Or were they just a product of their time? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more stories like this, ones that dig into the dark side of rock history, hit that subscribe button. Because the rise is always glorious. But the fall? The fall is where the truth lives.